I used to love these moments when the chaos and noise of teenagers filled the house with life, but now the silence that follows feels like a blanket of loneliness pressing down on me after 19 years of being a mother. I'm standing by the kitchen window, mug in hand, looking out at the driveway, and it's quiet now except for the faint sound of skateboard wheels scuffing the pavement as the boys get ready to leave. I watch my son Ryan and his friends pile into a beat-up sedan, their laughter fading away as the car reverses out onto the street. And it strikes me how much has changed. I remember the little boy with grass stains on his knees, the child who would run to me with scraped elbows and a big smile, holding out a flower he picked from the yard. Back then, I was his entire world. Our days were full of little adventures, going to the zoo, building blanket forts in the living room, and our house was the gathering place for games and sleepovers. However, time passes, doesn't it? Ryan grew up, and somewhere along the way, he's older now, almost a man, and busy with his own plans and world. The boys still occasionally come over to fix their skateboards in the garage, but now that they're taller and have deeper voices, they look at me with that courteous nod of acknowledgement that you give someone's mother. I'm no longer the fun mom. I'm just the woman who makes sure there's food in the refrigerator. I think about Matt, my husband, who hasn't been around since before dawn, but he used to leave me little notes. Our marriage wasn't always like this. We used to be team partners in every way and would stay up late talking about everything and nothing, sharing our dreams and making plans. We were young once, full of hope and excitement for the future we were building together, but now he's a stranger to me. His focus is entirely on his career, his projects, his deadlines, and he talks about his job like that. On the counter when he had to leave early, he would say something like, "I love you," or "Have a good day." The emptiness creeps in, especially after the boys leave. I finish my coffee and put the mug down, staring at the calendar on the fridge. Another weekend stretching ahead filled with nothing. I used to fill these gaps with yoga classes. It's his true love, and I'm just the afterthought. When he's at home, he's barely there, always on his phone or laptop answering emails and taking calls. I've tried to close the distance between us, putting on new dresses, date nights, surprise dinners, and date nights, but he hardly notices me. The person I used to be, a vibrant woman who could handle anything thrown her way, feels like a faded memory when I think back to last weekend at the skate park. I went with Ryan in the hopes of spending some time with him and feeling like part of his world again, even if only for a few hours. The place was packed with kids flying down ramps, the air filled with the sound of wheels grinding against Ryan, and I found myself sitting on a bench. I haven't had the energy lately, though, even to admit to myself that I haven't had the energy lately. When I saw Matt standing off to the side, glued to his phone, I felt a pang of nostalgia for the times when I was the one chasing after him, making sure he had his helmet on, and cheering every time he managed a trick. He was there, but not really. He glanced up a few times but didn't seem to notice me. I waved once, but he didn't see it, and my heart tightened a little. I turned away, feigning to watch the skaters instead, and that's when I started talking to Ryan's friend, a kid I had never met him before, but he greeted me with a smile and a casual confidence that surprised me. We talked about the typical topics like how long he had been skating and what tricks he was practicing. He was charming effortlessly, and before I knew it, we were laughing together. It felt good because I hadn't laughed like that in a long time. He was funny, but more than that, he seemed genuinely interested in talking to me. When I got home, Matt was already there, sitting on the couch with his laptop. He didn't ask about the skate park or my day at all. I stood there in the doorway for a moment, watching him, wondering when we'd become so distant. It was a simple conversation with a friend of my son's, but it stayed with me after I went home that day. The warmth of the interaction felt a little like the emptiness I'd been carrying around. Though I knew it was nothing, the boy's funny story stuck in my throat like a secret. I sat down at the kitchen table again and traced the wood grain with my fingertips, lost in thought, when my phone buzzed, bringing me back to the present. It was a simple text from the boy from the skate park. "Hey, I hope you're having a good morning." It was friendly and innocent, but as I read it, a tiny spark lit up inside of me, and I typed it back to you before I could. "The house is quiet again, and I know I should start cleaning up or getting ready for the day, but instead I sit there with my phone in my hand waiting for his reply, feeling something I haven't felt in years. It begins slowly, and our texts are harmless at first, just a continuation of our conversation from the skate park. He tells me a joke about one of the skaters. I tell myself it's nothing, just a friendly text, just a brief moment of connection, but it's the first time in a long time that I've felt seen, and that feeling is addicting. Falling off his board in a spectacular fashion, and I make a joke of my own about Matt being so dependent on his phone that he might as well marry it. It's silly and playful, but there's a warmth in our messages that makes me feel lighter. Over the next few days, we text each other occasionally, and he responds quickly. I find myself checking my phone more frequently than I should hope to, because I can't remember the last time something made me laugh like that. After Matt goes to bed early, exhausted from another long day at work, I find myself sitting alone in the living room with my phone in hand. I send a simple message, "Hey, what are you up to?" And he responds almost immediately, "Just got home. Bored you?" I glance toward the stairs, listening for any sounds from upstairs, knowing that Matt is asleep. It's like a secret game we're playing, one that only the two of us know about, and I crave it. Everyone is in bed, so I type back bored too. There's a pause before his response arrives, and my heart skips a beat. This is the first time our conversation has escalated into something more, and I stare at the screen, feeling the pull of his words and how they make me feel seen. I type back before I can stop myself, and from there, our texts get flirtier and bolder. He tells me that I look gorgeous in the dress I wore to the skate park, and I blush. I know I should end this now before it gets any worse, but every time I consider doing so, I get that empty ache in my chest, the same one I get when Matt walks by me without saying anything or even looking at me, so I keep going and let myself get lost in the excitement of something new one Friday. I can't remember the last time someone told me I looked beautiful. I tell him he's sweet, and he responds with a winking emoji before just telling the truth. It's thrilling, dangerous, but thrilling. The night after Ryan leaves with friends and Matt is away on a business trip, he texts me again and says, "Just the two of us." I know this is a line I shouldn't cross, but the idea of sitting at home by myself and staring at the same four walls while Matt is somewhere, God knows where, feels unbearable. I tremble and tighten my fingers, telling myself, it's just a movie, nothing more. But as I drive to the theater, my heart races with a mixture of excitement and fear. When I park and get out of the car, I see him waiting by the entrance with his hands in his pockets and a casual smile on his face. He looks like a boy, but he's actually a man, standing there in the dim glow of the marquee lights. He says, "Hey, I was starting to think you'd stood me up," in a lighthearted and playful voice. I laugh, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. I almost turned around and drove home, where we purchased tickets for a random action movie that neither of us cared for, and sat in the back. I feel his arm brush against mine just a little bit as the lights go down and the previews begin. My pulse quickens, and I move a little closer to him. Halfway through the film, he leans over and whispers, "Are you enjoying the movie?" His breath warm against my ear. I turn to answer, but the words die on my lips. His eyes are so close to mine that they search, and I feel as though I'm suspended in that moment, hanging on the edge of something I can't control before I can. Before I can stop myself, I lean in and give him a kiss. His lips are soft and gentle at first, and he tastes like the candy he had been eating earlier. However, when his hand cuts my cheek, I give him a harder kiss in return, allowing the months of loneliness and feeling invisible to pour into that messy, desperate kiss. When we finally pull away, we're both out of breath, and he looks at me with wide eyes that are a mixture of shock and something deeper. I've wanted to do that. The rest of the film is a blur, and I can't concentrate on anything but the sensation of his hand against mine and the way his pinky hooks around mine like a promise. I know this is wrong, and I know the risks and complications that could result from this, but in that moment, I don't care. I feel something I haven't felt in years. He speaks in a quiet, rough voice for a long time, and I swallow hard, my heart still pounding in my chest. He turned to face me, his hands in his hoodie pockets, and said, "Can I see you again? Just us?" I should have said, "No, I should end this now before it goes any further," but instead I nodded, and he moved closer, brushing a stray hair behind my ear and his fingers lingering against my skin. "Good night," he said in a low, soft voice. I drove home in a day, the memory of his kiss lingering on my lips, my fingers still tingling where he touched me, and when I arrived home, the house was dark and deserted. Doorway, feeling the weight of what I just did, the line I crossed, but as I lay in bed that night and looked up at the ceiling, I realized something for the first time in years. I don't feel numb. I feel alive. I'm standing in the kitchen cleaning the counters for what seems like the 100th time, a nervous habit that has recently made me keep my hands busy while my mind races. The house is too quiet. Ryan is out with friends, and Matt is on another business trip, and the silence is oppressive, filling the empty spaces like. I can feel the familiar ache of loneliness settling in my chest like a thick fog. My phone buzzes on the counter, waking me from my reverie. It's him. "Hey, what are you up to tonight?" I stare at the message, biting my lip. I should ignore it, put the phone down, and leave, but I can't because I've come to crave these moments with him. The thrill, the distraction, the rush of feeling wanted. I type back before I can stop myself. "What about you?" He responds almost immediately. "I want to hang out too." I take a deep breath, my fingers shaking as I type, and then there's a pause before his response comes through. I put the phone down, my heart pounding in my ears, and I look around the kitchen, suddenly aware of the stillness of the house, the emptiness that stretches from room to room, and I realize that I'm standing at the edge of something irrevocable. The question may seem innocent on the surface, but we both know it's not, and we both know what it means. I hear a car pull up outside, and I hear the muffled laughter of boys as they step out. I wasn't expecting him to bring friends, so I feel uneasy, but it's too late. I open the door, and there he is, standing with two other guys from the skate park, smiling casually like they do this all the time. "Hey," he says, stepping inside the car. A part of me wants to turn around and call it off, but another part pushes me moving forward. We settle into the living room, and I can feel the tension in the air, a current of electricity that wasn't there before. The boys are loudly laughing and joking around, but there's an undercurrent of something darker that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I hope you don't mind that they were bored, so I brought them along. I force a smile, trying to ignore the flutter of nerves in my stomach. "No, it's fine," I say, but my voice sounds shaky even to my own ears. Catching his eye, he gives me a small, comforting smile, but it doesn't reach his eyes. I guess the boy who brought them the soda. I also think about opening a bottle of wine, but I decide against it because I need to keep my wits about me. One of the boys, a lanky kid with dark hair, sits back on the couch and looks at me with a smirk that makes my skin crawl. "What's the plan for tonight?" he asks, his voice dripping with a suggestive tone that I can't help but laughs. One of the people I've been texting approaches me, standing a little too close, and touches my arm with his fingers. It feels like a spark that ignites dry tinder. "You okay?" he asks, his voice low enough that the others can't hear. I nod, but I'm not sure if I'm telling the truth or not. "Yeah, I'm fine," he says, taking my hand and guiding me away from the others toward the kitchen. My heart is in my throat, and I feel like a teenager skulking behind my parents' back, caught up in a whirlwind of fear and excitement. When we're out of sight, he pulls me close He presses me against the counter, his hands moving over my sides, and I can hear the faint sound of the TV in the other room, the boys laughing. It feels wrong, like we're on the verge of being caught, and the threat of it makes my heart race even faster. I kiss him back, wring his shirt, and feel like I'm clinging to a lifeline I've wanted all day. He whispers against my mouth. "Me too," I admit, even though a part of me knows this is going out of control. He enters the doorway of Lee's living room, his smirk expanding as he takes in the scene. "Whoa, am I interrupting something?" I push him away, my cheeks burning with shame. "We were just what?" The kid interrupts, stepping closer, his grin turning to mean you two are having a little fun without us. The tension thickens, making the air heavy. I look at the boy I've been seeing for reassurance, but he just gives me a strange, unreadable expression, as if he's suddenly detached while watching the scene unfolds as though it's a game, and perhaps we should all have a little fun. The other boy says, my heart sinks. This isn't what I wanted, and this isn't what I agreed to. I feel like the room's walls are closing in on me. Hey, cool it, he says, stepping in front of me. We just hang out, but the atmosphere has changed irrevocably. I can feel a dark current pulling me beneath. The boys exchange glances, and there is some unspoken communication between them. When they finally get up to leave, the relief that fills me is so great that he lingers in the doorway and gives me one last, tender kiss. Then they laugh again, brushing it off as if it's nothing, and they return to the living room, but I can't get rid of the feeling that something horrible almost happened. I follow them back, sitting on the edge of the couch with my hands shaking in my lap, and we watch TV for another hour without really seeing it, making forced small talk that feels hollow. The front door opens, and the sound of Matt's keys jangling as he enters jolts me out of my reverie.
But it feels different now, tainted.
I'll text you later. He smiles as if everything is fine, as if we didn't just cross a line we can never uncross. I nod, forcing a smile. Okay. Then, as the door closes behind them, the silence rushes back in heavier than ever. I stand there, staring at the empty living room, the echo of their voices still ringing in my ears. Ryan leaps in behind Matt, dropping a skateboard by the door with a loud clatter. He looks up at me and smiles, oblivious to the storm that has been building in this house while he was gone. It feels like the air in the room shifts heavy with the remnants of what happened just moments before. I'm still standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the spot where the boys had been sitting, my heart pounding in my chest, the echo of their laughter, the tense predatory smiles. All of it is still there, lingering like smoke. His tone is light, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes as he studies me, like he's noticing a shift he can't quite place. I force a smile, my voice catching in my throat. Just tidying up, I say, my eyes darting to Matt, who's setting his bag down already and taking out his phone. If he can see it, if he can sense the darkness that's taken root inside me, the stain I can't scrub away. Hey Mom, Ryan says, casually heading straight for the kitchen, probably looking for food. I nod too quickly. Yes, I'm fine, just a long day, I say, my voice sounding too happy, too forced, and I can feel the crack in the facade, the thin veneer of normalcy that I'm desperately trying to hold. He looks up for a moment, giving me a half-hearted smile that doesn't reach his eyes. You okay? Almost as if it's an afterthought, asking out of obligation rather than concern. He's already looking down at his phone again, scrolling through emails or messages, his mind elsewhere. Matt's eyes linger on me for a moment longer, narrowing slightly as if he's picking up on something, but he doesn't press it and shrugs it off. I follow them, trying to act casual, but every step feels like I'm walking through quicksand, and my legs feel heavy like they could give out at any moment. It's like standing on a tightrope, balancing precariously above a chasm, and I know I can't survive if I fall. Ryan looks up from his rummaging while holding a sandwich in one hand. His tone is light and innocent, and when I get there, my pulse spikes and a cold sweat breaks out along my spine for a split second. I'm sure he's figured it out that he can see the guilt painted all over my face, but then he speaks. I'm shaking as I bring it to my lips, and I take a deep gulp trying to drown the bile rising in my throat, trying to swallow down the taste of regret that's still fresh in my mouth. He shrugs and takes a large bite of his sandwich, clearly unconcerned. I lie, and the words flow too easily and smoothly. I'm getting better at this, and I realize with a sick twist of irony that I must have forgotten to lock it earlier. Matt looks at me, and I can feel his eyes crawling over my skin, removing the layers I've worked so hard to keep intact. It's as if he senses that something is off, that something has changed, but he can't quite put his finger on it, and for the time being that's my saving grace. He reaches out and pulls me into a quick hug before kissing my forehead. It's a familiar gesture that used to feel comforting, but now it feels like a weight, like the kiss of someone I no longer deserve. Are you sure you're okay? He asks again, softer this time, and he pulls back to look at me. I nod, plastering on that smile I've mastered over the years, just exhausted. It's been a long day, I say, and Matt watches me for a moment longer before nodding. I let out a slow, shaky breath and steady myself with my hands on the counter's edge. I've never felt closer to the edge than I do now. It feels like I'm standing on a precipice, and one wrong move could send everything tumbling down around me. The fear of being caught and losing everything gnaws at my insides like a ravenous animal, but underneath that fear, there's something darker, something I can't even admit to myself. How alive I felt tonight terrifies me. It feels like I've been sleepwalking through my life, and tonight I was startled awake, but the rush has since subsided and been replaced by a hollow ache, the weight of what I've done pressing down on me. I walk upstairs in a day, the sounds of my husband and son drifting away as I step into the bedroom, closing the door behind me and leaning against it. How that brief, chaotic encounter made me feel like I was finally breathing after years of holding my breath. I sit on the edge of the bed with my head in my hands, feeling the cool wood against my back. I can feel the tears welling up hot and stinging, but I bite them back. I can't cry. I can't play the victim here. I did this, I made these decisions, and now I have to live with them. I look down at my hands, the same hands that touched him and held him close, and they're shaking like they belong to someone else. I don't recognize myself anymore. I feel as though I've stepped outside of my own life, as if I'm watching. A gentle knock on the door causes someone else's tragedy to unfold. I quickly wipe my eyes and try to gather myself. I force my voice to sound steady as I say, "Come in." Matt enters and closes the door behind him. At first, he doesn't say anything, just looks at me with that same searching gaze as if he's trying to see past the mask I'm wearing.
"I just wanted to check on you," he says.
Finally, his voice is gentle, and I manage to manage a small smile that doesn't reach my eyes. "I'm okay." I say the lies slipping out as easily as, "I love you," he whispers, and there's a raw honesty in his voice that cuts through me like a knife. I whisper back, and for the first time, the words feel like a betrayal. He leaves the room, quietly closing the door behind him. I sit there staring at the closed door, feeling like I'm trapped on the wrong side of it, locked out of my own life. I don't know what comes next. He nods slowly now, as if he's not completely convinced, but he doesn't press it. I'm not sure if I can continue walking this line without falling. I feel like I'm at a crossroads and don't know which way to go. One wrong move, and everything I've worked so hard to build could fall apart. I need help and guidance, but I'm afraid of what that might look like and the decisions I might have to make. For now, I'm just trying to maintain my balance so that the mask stays in place, but I know it will break soon.